The morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac of Richardson Global's private airfield just outside Atlanta. Victoria Richardson stood at the edge of the runway, her Valentino heels clicking impatiently against the concrete as she checked her watch for the third time in as many minutes. The Gulfstream G650 sat fueled and ready, its sleek white body gleaming in the Georgia heat. "Where is he?" Victoria's voice cut through the humid air like a knife. Her assistant Marcus scrambled with his tablet, phone pressed against his ear, panic evident in his expression. "Ms. Richardson, Captain Hayes just called from Grady Memorial. He collapsed this morning, possible stroke. They're running tests now." Victoria's jaw clenched. She was 31 years old and had inherited Richardson Global Logistics from her father 2 years ago after his sudden heart attack. The company specialized in rapid response cargo operations, serving everyone from humanitarian organizations to tech giants who needed equipment moved yesterday. Her reputation was built on one promise: we deliver no matter what. Today's flight wasn't just important, it was survival. Titan Industries, her largest client, was threatening to switch to a competitor after a series of missed deadlines that weren't even Richardson Global's fault. Victoria had arranged a face-to-face meeting at Titan's headquarters in Miami, a sit-down with their notoriously impatient CEO who didn't believe in second chances. The meeting was in 90 minutes. Commercial flights were grounded due to weather. This jet was her only option. "Get me another pilot," she snapped. "Now." Marcus made 7 calls in 5 minutes. Every charter pilot in the region was either already airborne or couldn't reach them in time. The backup pilot they kept on retainer had his license temporarily suspended after a DUI. Their third option was in Colorado at a wedding. Victoria felt the walls closing in. Everything she'd built, everything her father had sacrificed for, was about to crumble because she couldn't find someone to fly a damn airplane. That's when she heard a voice, quiet but steady, cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Ma'am, I can fly it." Victoria spun around. Standing 10 feet away, holding a mop and wearing the dark blue maintenance uniform with maintenance staff stitched across the chest, was Marcus. No, not her assistant. This was Marcus Bennett, the night janitor who cleaned the executive offices and kept the hangar floors spotless. Marcus Bennett was 43 years old, though the weariness in his dark eyes made him look older. He was tall and lean, with close-cropped graying hair and hands that showed years of hard work. For the past 2 years he'd been invisible, exactly how he wanted it. Victoria's assistant let out a surprised laugh. Even Marcus couldn't help the nervous chuckle that escaped. You're serious right now?" The janitor, Marcus, didn't flinch. He just stood there, calm and composed, his deep brown eyes never leaving Victoria's. She looked him up and down, taking in the maintenance uniform, the mop bucket beside him, the complete absence of bravado in his stance. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "You know what? Sure. Fly this jet and I'll marry you. How about that?" Her assistant burst into outright laughter. Even the ground crew standing nearby smirked. Marcus simply nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." He set down his mop, walked past them with measured steps and climbed the jet stairs. Victoria felt her heart hammering as she watched him disappear into the cockpit. This was insane. She was about to trust a multi-million-dollar aircraft and her life to the man who cleaned her toilets. But desperation had a way of making madness seem reasonable. She followed him up the stairs, her assistant calling after her, "Ms. Richardson, you cannot be serious." She was. She strapped herself into the passenger seat, pulled on the headset, and stared at Marcus as he moved through the pre-flight checklist with mechanical precision. His hands danced across the controls with a fluidity that sent a chill down her spine. "Ready?" His voice through the headset was professional, almost military in its crispness. Victoria's mouth was dry. "Just don't kill us." The engines roared to life. The Gulfstream rolled forward, gained speed, and lifted into the sky with such smoothness that Victoria barely felt the transition from ground to air. She gripped the armrests, but as they climbed and Marcus guided the jet through a banking turn that aligned them perfectly with their flight path to Miami, her death grip slowly loosened. This wasn't luck. This wasn't beginner's confidence. This was mastery. "Where did you learn to fly?" she finally asked, her voice barely audible over the engine hum. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes scanning the horizon. "United States Air Force, ma'am. I flew C-130 Hercules cargo planes. Did 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan." Victoria's world tilted. "You're telling me you're a decorated military pilot, and you've been mopping my floors for 2 years?" "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Because I needed a job that didn't ask questions." The flight took 75 minutes. Marcus landed at Miami Executive Airport with the kind of precision that didn't even jostle the coffee cup in the center console. As they taxied to the private terminal, Victoria sat in stunned silence, her mind racing through 2 years of memories, every time she'd walked past him without a glance, every time her staff had treated him like furniture, every dismissive interaction she'd had with the invisible man who cleaned up after them all. "Mr. Bennett," she said as he powered down the engines, "I need you to wait here. I'll be back in an hour." He nodded, already pulling a worn paperback from his bag. Victoria's meeting with Titan Industries went better than she could have hoped. She saved the contract, secured a 3-year extension and even negotiated better terms. But the entire time she couldn't stop thinking about the man waiting in her jet. When she returned, she found Marcus sitting on the bottom stair, reading in the shade of the wing. He stood as she approached. "Thank you," she said, and meant it more than she'd meant any words in years. "Just doing what needed to be done, ma'am?" "Victoria. Call me Victoria." He nodded but didn't use her name. On the flight back she asked more questions. He answered some, deflected others. She learned that he'd left the Air Force after his wife Keisha died in childbirth, leaving him alone with twin daughters who were now 12 years old. She learned that he'd lost his parents young, had no siblings, no support system beyond the twins themselves. She learned that flying reminded him too much of the man he used to be, the man who'd lost the most important person in his world while he was halfway across the planet delivering supplies to a desert airbase. "I couldn't do it anymore," he said quietly. "Every time I sat in a cockpit I felt like I was choosing the sky over them. So I chose them." Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. Over the following weeks, she found herself noticing Marcus in ways she never had before. She saw him arrive every evening at 6, precisely on time, and leave at 2 in the morning, precisely on schedule. She noticed that he ate dinner alone in the break room, always something simple he'd packed from home, and spent his breaks reading thick books on philosophy and history. She learned that his daughters, Maya and Zara, were brilliant students who wanted to be an aerospace engineer and a doctor, respectively. She learned that Marcus worked the night shift so he could be home when they left for school and when they returned. She also learned that he was kind. When one of the younger maintenance workers, a kid named Devin barely out of high school, was struggling with the buffing machine, Marcus spent his entire break teaching him the proper technique. When the company's receptionist, Miss Chen, mentioned her grandson was interested in the military, Marcus spent an hour answering the boy's questions over the phone. He was patient. He was steady. He was everything Victoria had trained herself not to look for because she'd decided years ago that power and companionship couldn't coexist. One evening Victoria found herself working late deliberately, timing it so she'd cross paths with Marcus. She found him in the executive wing, carefully cleaning the windows of her office. "Marcus." He turned surprised. "Ms. Richardson. I can come back if—" "No, please. I wanted to talk to you." She stepped into her office and after a hesitation he followed. She'd done her homework. She'd made calls. She'd learned that Captain Marcus Bennett had been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for completing a critical medical evacuation mission under heavy fire. She'd learned that his commanding officers had called him one of the most talented pilots they'd ever trained. She'd learned that he'd walked away from a military career that would have made him a legend. "I have a proposition," she said. Marcus's expression became guarded. "I'm happy where I am, ma'am. I need a director of flight operations. Someone who understands aircraft, logistics, and leadership. The salary is $180,000 plus benefits. You'd have normal hours, you'd see your daughters every evening." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he shook his head. "I appreciate the offer. But I can't." "Why not?" "Because," he stopped, struggling with the words. "Because I'm not that person anymore. That person got medals while his wife died alone in a hospital. That person chose duty over being there when it mattered most. I can't be him again." Victoria's voice was soft. "You didn't choose duty over her, Marcus. You were serving your country. You were doing what millions of people depend on pilots like you to do. Doesn't change the fact that she needed me and I wasn't there. So your punishment is to hide? To pretend you're less than you are?" Marcus's eyes flashed with something, anger, pain she couldn't tell. "My punishment is living with it. Every single day." They stood in silence, the weight of grief and regret filling the space between them. "I'm sorry," Victoria finally said. "I pushed too hard." Marcus nodded and turned to leave. But at the door he paused. "Why do you care?" Victoria met his eyes. "Because I spent 6 years building this company into something my father would be proud of. And I did it alone because I thought that's what strength looked like. But watching you with your daughters, the way you show up for them every single day, that's real strength. And I think I've been wrong about what matters." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Not agreement but recognition. Like he saw her clearly for the first time. 3 weeks later, Victoria received a call from the FAA. There had been a complaint filed against Richardson Global, a whistleblower claiming their safety protocols were inadequate. It was her competitor Apex Logistics trying to sabotage her. The FAA was sending inspectors, and if they found violations, she'd lose her operating license. The inspection was scheduled for the following Monday. Victoria spent the weekend in her office, reviewing every manual, every checklist, every maintenance log. She was prepared. But Sunday night, she discovered a critical gap in their emergency evacuation procedures that the previous director had never updated. She needed someone who understood emergency protocols at the highest level. She needed an expert. She needed Marcus. She called him at midnight. He answered on the second ring, voice alert. "Ms. Richardson? I need your help. I know I have no right to ask, but I'll be there in 20 minutes. He was there in 15. Together, they worked through the night, Marcus drawing on his military training to help Victoria completely overhaul her emergency procedures. They worked side by side, and Victoria saw a side of him she'd never witnessed before. The commander, the leader, the man who'd once been responsible for million-dollar aircraft and the lives of everyone aboard. When the FAA inspectors arrived Monday morning, Richardson Global's protocols weren't just compliant, they were exemplary. The inspectors left impressed. The complaint was dismissed as baseless. Victoria found Marcus in the break room afterward, looking exhausted but calm. "You saved me," she said simply. "You saved yourself. I just helped with the paperwork." "Marcus," she took a breath. "I know you don't want to be that person again. But what if you could be a different version of him? Not the one who sacrificed everything. The one who gets to choose." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then quietly, "I have to think about my daughters." "I know. That's what makes you perfect for this." He didn't answer. But Victoria saw something shift in his eyes, not certainty but possibility. 2 months later, Marcus Bennett became Richardson Global's Director of Flight Operations. He still arrived at 6, but now it was 6 in the morning. He still left precisely on schedule, but now it was so he could have dinner with Maya and Zara every evening. And slowly, carefully, he began to fly again, not as penance, not as escape, but as purpose. Victoria watched him transform, and in watching him she transformed too. She learned to delegate, to trust, to lead without dominating. She learned that strength wasn't the absence of vulnerability, it was the courage to be vulnerable and keep moving forward. On a clear December evening, as snow fell softly over Atlanta, Victoria invited Marcus to the airfield after hours. The Gulfstream sat on the tarmac, engines warm. "Want to fly?" she asked. Marcus smiled, a real smile, rare and genuine. "With you. Always." They climbed aboard, Marcus in the pilot's seat, Victoria beside him. As the jet lifted into the winter sky, banking over the glittering city lights, Victoria reached across and took his hand. "You know," she said, "I never actually meant what I said. About marrying you." Marcus glanced at her, that small smile still playing at his lips. "I know. But what if I meant it now?" The jet soared higher, slicing through clouds into the clear starlit expanse above. Marcus squeezed her hand, his voice warm with something that sounded like hope. "Then I'd say you just became the best co-pilot I ever had." Below them, the world spread out in a tapestry of lights and darkness. Above them, infinite sky. And between them, finally, the courage to believe that broken things could be whole again, not by hiding the cracks but by choosing, every day, to keep flying anyway. What would you do if you were in Victoria's position? Would you trust the janitor to fly your private jet? Let us know in the comments below. If this story of redemption and second chances touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible true-to-life stories every week. Ring the bell so you never miss our next upload. Share this video with someone who believes in the power of hidden potential.